Hello. Good morning, everyone. This is the Affordable Housing Growth and Development Trust Fund Board meeting on Friday, February 3rd, 2023, being a little after 9 a.m. We'll commence the meeting. And, please note that in accordance with Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 20, the chair must inquire whether anyone is taping this meeting and to please make their presence known. All right, doesn't look like anybody's making their presence known that's recorded. We'll move on to call to order. So Laura Schufelt.
Here.
Wendy Northcross.
Here.
Mark Milne.
Here.
Mark Els. Here. Okay. Andy Clyburn is absent. All right. Is there any public comment, or is anybody here from the public? Do they wish to say anything? No? All right. I guess I'll move on to the next item then. Approval of the minutes from December 2nd, 2022 Trust Fund meeting.
I would move to approve.
I'll second that.
Okay. Is there any discussion?
I
Right,
guess I
Laura.
would move to approve as amended. We had a red line copy. So,
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. And Wendy, you second that?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay. Seeing no conversation relevant to this, move to a vote. Laura Schufelt,
yes.
Wendy Northcross,
Yes.
Mark Milne,
Yes.
Mark Els, yes. Thank you. Okay. Moving into application discussion and potential vote from Mass Military Support Foundation. Jillian, shall I turn this over to you at this point and then Dawn, or how would you like me to proceed?
Well, I'm certainly happy to introduce, just to let you know that Charles McLaughlin and I did meet with the applicants. We did go through, and I think today they have some additional information regarding because we had discussed security of a grant. In other words, that what would have to be pledged or liened. And I think they have some more information because at the time the purchase and sales were not executed. So I don't know if they have additional information, but I will then turn it over through the chair to Marty, I believe. Marty Warnes, I think, is going to present, or Don Cox. From,
Okay.
I'm sorry, from Mass Military Support Foundation.
All right, so who is providing us with this information today? I think Dawn's still trying to connect as I look at this.
Okay, I see that. Yes, it looks like he's connecting with his audio here. And I do not see Marty on the screen or with his name.
Okay, do we want to pause and move on to the second application and then come back for discussion? Is that reasonable, board?
Yes, I agree with that.
Thank you. I will proceed. So we'll move to item 3 and then we'll come back to 2. All right, item number 3, application, discussion and potential vote from friends or relatives with autism and related disabilities. Again, Jillian, I'll turn it over to you for a real quick overview, but David Kaplan and Kathy Oman are here.
Yeah, and I don't want to take any of their thunder, but this is the first time you'll be looking at this application. Forward is phase 2. So this is an application, a second phase of an application that was previously funded by the town through CPA funds. And I will turn it right over to David Kaplan, I believe is going to present, and Kathy Oman, I think is not on the screen, but oh yes, she is. There
Yes,
she
she
is.
is.
So we
Yep.
have two representatives here for presentation.
Great, thank you. Proceed.
David, you're muted. David, you're on mute.
Is this better?
Go ahead. Yep.
Okay. Thanks, Jillian. Thanks to all of you. We appreciate this opportunity to speak with you this morning. And of course, we appreciated your past support of phase one of the project, Forward at the Rock. I want to point out that Kathy is our board president who's with us today. Bob Samolak, who's our board vice president, is also here. And before I talk a little bit more about the specifics of the project, I think Kathy is going to talk to you a little bit about Forward and the development of phase one and how we ended up with our plans for phase two.
Thanks, David. And as David said, thanks for inviting us this morning. We really appreciate it. So as many of you here, I think will recall, we came to the Barnstable CPC and then the town council for funding for phase one. And the town of Barnstable contributed $250,000 to our phase one build, which is 2 group homes in Dennis at 131 Holcomb Rock Road on town donated land. We built 2 group homes, each with 4 bedrooms. There are currently 8 residents living there who moved in the fall of 2020. As you recall, in the middle of the pandemic. The 2 buildings were built on time and on budget by Cape Associates. They are run through a sublease by Capabilities. And the same 8 people have lived in these homes since the fall of 2020, and I'm happy to report are doing well there. This is a regional project. 4 of the residents come from Barnstable. The other residents come from Dennis, Yarmouth, Sandwich, and Orleans. The 2 group homes are built on approximately half of the property that the town leased to us. And to fulfill our original commitment to the town to build 16 units, we launched phase 2 shortly after everyone moved in the fall of 2020. We also launched we looked around the Cape. We launched a task force and met with people from schools, parents, agencies across Cape Cod, and importantly, the Department of Developmental Services. And we found that, as you can imagine, all forms of affordable housing for people with developmental disabilities are necessary on Cape Cod. However, the Department of Developmental Services feels that 1-bedroom apartments best fits the need, the growing need for affordable housing for this adult population. So we are building 8 1-bedroom units. The Department of Developmental Services will determine who the residents will be, as they did with phase 1. They are eager to see this project. We had a few bumps in the road in phase 1 and phase 2. They are very eager to see us build this and gave us approval last April with their support. And we know from talking to them that they are working with families and have been for years, and they feel like they could fill these beds immediately as soon as they're built. And as you know, that's the case with all kinds of affordable housing here on Cape Cod. So we are excited that things have gone so well with phase 1. The town has been incredibly supportive. We went back to our select board and asked them to approve the apartments instead of 2 more group homes. And we have, as David, will probably outline, we have met, we've met a lot of, we've gone to planning and housing, and we're in good shape in the town of Dennis. So this project is even more expensive than the last one. We have also already been approved for $180,000 in CPC funds from the Yarmouth CPC, who also donated to phase 1. And we are currently have applications in the towns of Brewster, Bourne, in Sandwich. And we are looking forward to meeting with them as well. So I think I'll let David take over and, please ask any questions as they come up.
Okay, thanks, Kathy. And let me see if I can share my screen. Oh, it looks like Jillian or whoever's running the Zoom may have to give me permission.
You should have that permission now, Mr. Kaplan.
Okay, thank you. Right. Can everyone see that okay?
Yes.
Yes.
So I think we can all agree that there's obviously a need for all forms of affordable housing. This, as Kathy discussed, responds to a specific need in this population. It responds to the Cape Cod Regional Policy Plan. And the way this is going to work is as in phase one, the Department of Developmental Disabilities is going to select all of the tenants, place the tenants, ultimately be responsible for their services. But the services, like our group homes, will be provided by each individual's service provider, such as capabilities, community connections, etc. It adds 8 permanent, extremely affordable units to subsidized housing. Dennis gets credit on their SHI list, but they are all at 30% or less median income. No resident, and based on today's numbers, no resident will pay more than $571 in rent per month. Rents and utilities will be subsidized through DHCD project-based vouchers, which will pay 110% of fair market rent, and the 10% is utilities, and allows for 3 months of vacancy per unit. And we think we obviously learned a lot building phase one. We think we can put some of that knowledge to work on phase two, and leverages our existing partnerships with the town of Dennis, HAC, Department of Developmental Disabilities, DHCD, and others. The project is going to be 8 one-bedroom apartments on 4.6 acres in Dennis. They'll be adjacent to phase one, but will operate separately. And the purpose is to accommodate people who still need a lot of assistance services, but can live independently. So there's no round-the-clock full-time staff at these apartments. There'll be a lot of services coming in for the residents, and a lot of assistive technology involved. The Department of Developmental Services has a big initiative for assistive technology, I think in large part responding to the staffing shortage, which we're all feeling, and they're certainly feeling that in the disability service provider area. So we'll build them with forethought for how they're going to actually be used. We've sited the building in a way to minimize the impact on the neighborhood. There's really only one clear abutter at 151 Holcomb Rock Road. Otherwise, we're surrounded by the town sandpit, the new fire station in Dennis, and then just a lot of woodland, basically. So we're going to have a common area, and this will be an area where people can socialize, can get the provision of their services. I think a lot of parents we've spoken to want to have their adult kids be getting some of these services together, and the department allows for that. So I think there'll be a lot of human interaction that we're trying to foster. We've been mindful of what we learned from COVID, and a lot of that was fresh air, backup storage, power generation, and that's all being included. And they're all built so the residents can age in place. They'll all be barrier-free, no thresholds anywhere, single story, basically on ground level. And even the roof, the ceilings are designed to be able to accommodate hoists in the future if that becomes necessary. So let me show you a little bit of what these are gonna look like. Again, they're 8 one-bedroom apartments. They each, it's a little hard to see this in one, basically 2 dimensions. But this is the rear of one wing. The building forms an L. And each unit will have a porch in the back. So they can, again, get out, get some fresh air when they want to, have a barbecue, whatever it happens to be. This is the common area space that you can see has a wheelchair ramp here. There's a lot of attention paid to ingress, egress, fire safety. Sorry. Here is more of a front view. Everyone enters their own apartment from the parking lot. Here again, this is another side view. This common area again. So the common area is basically at the elbow of the L. And here's just a little bit more of the rear of the other wing. You can see these porches are much higher because it's a big slope out the back. It's actually going to be a pretty nice view, I think. Here is the floor plan. Again, you can see here's one bedroom, porch off the back. They all have washers and dryers. The Department of Developmental Services wanted us to do that because part of the life skills that they'll be teaching are cleaning your clothes. And they've also had less than optimal experiences with shared laundry facilities. So we've made this decision. It meant a little more expense and a little larger apartment, but yeah, obviously we need to respond to the population that'll be served. The bathroom, you can see it's a roll-in shower. Again, no barriers, all set up for aging in place and any possible physical disability. And on the developmental disability side, it's also a lot of attention paid to sensory needs, quiet, all the walls between the units will have offset studs, a lot of soundproofing. And you can see you come in from the parking lot. If you drive, we don't think very many of the residents probably will have cars, but it's a possibility. And we want to allow for that, and also staff parking and coming to see the residents. So you come in, there's a pretty nice area of sitting, dining, kitchen here, a full kitchen, obviously not a large kitchen, but again, all appliances for disabilities, a roll under sink, an oven that is lower and opens sideways for access. Just thinking of every possibility that we might encounter as people age here. Here you can see this gray area. I don't know how well you can see it, but that's the existing. So here are the 2 group homes side by side. Here's the new building. This is the common area in the middle, and then 4 apartments. Here's that lone abutter. And fortunately, we've already brought in most of the driveway, you can see up to here, and the infrastructure. So there's already gas, electric, water, phone, internet brought in. That should at least save us some money. Here we are with first just the statistics of the square footage. And you can see each single unit is about 656 square feet, which is I think a pretty good size. The cost estimates here, how much it's going to be per square foot, I'm sure you know that's a moving target, and I doubt it'll move down. We think we're pretty close. We based that on some current estimates, working with Hack, who had real bids going on with some of their projects, and then compared it to phase 1 and other information that we have about what additional costs get added because of the complete barrier-free approach. So here's our development team, the Department of Developmental Services, Hack, Union Studio, who did phase 1 and 2 and has a lot of experience in this area. Horsley Witten, who you probably know, Sandwich, large engineering firm out of Sandwich. Gary Barber, who's been involved with a lot of Town of Dennis public projects, was a contractor himself. He'll be our clerk of the works. He's a volunteer. We have a forward building committee, which has some outside contractors, and then forward board members, accountant, CPA, several lawyers, which is just par for the course. Let's see. So here are our current cost estimates. And we're lucky we have no cost of land acquisition. We pay $1 a year in rent to the town for 99 years. And this is pretty typical. The numbers developed by Hack. We're hoping to control them as much as possible. Just as a side note, we originally wanted to do this as modular. And as time went on, it turned out that just wouldn't work, either budget, time, or especially the constriction of the sizes available to accommodate wheelchairs. So we switched back to stick-built. Here is, Kathy mentioned some of these already, where we're projecting the money will be coming from. And you can see here, your potential contribution is here. But again, we're going to a lot of different CPCs. Last time it was 6. This time, I think we're hoping for 8. We haven't gotten to everybody yet based on their deadlines. A good mortgage, it looks like we'll be qualified actually for maybe a little bit more than 665, but we want to be fairly conservative with that. And then we're waiting to hear from the state funding of $1.5 million, which clearly is important. The decision should be coming relatively soon, but when, we don't know, and they're not saying. So the town of Dennis has been extremely supportive with their $750,000, and we're grateful for that. The Yarmouth CPC has already approved it, so it's just going through the town warrant process now. And Brewster Housing has approved it. It now goes to their CPC for final approval, and then that will go through the process. Here we have, this is kind of our readiness at the moment. So we have select board approval, we have our zoning special permit. So we're set on zoning. Site control is established through our lease with the town of Dennis. We've got Old Kings Highway and Mass Historic Commission approval already. Our environmental assessment's been done, it was clean. And the 6 CPC applications to date, as you can see, so far we've secured 750,000, 793.5 is pending, but we think that it's pretty likely Yarmouth, Brewster, which are the larger ones, are likely. And we're hoping to start construction sometime in late summer, early fall. It's really going to depend on when all the financing gets finalized, and we can close on the financing, which can be a fairly slow process with this many people involved. And then probably a year later, be ready for occupancy. Last time it took probably 9 months to build phase 2. Cape Associates did the work. They were really fantastic, just kept working through COVID, rain, snow, you name it. There was only one day when the project was totally shut down. So, but then it takes a while for the Department of Developmental Services and DHCD to really shake down the property, particularly related to this population. DDS goes through a lot of practice with fire drills, et cetera, before anyone actually can move in. So, but we know they've told us over and over that they've got a big group waiting for this type of housing, who they know is in an inadequate housing now, living with parents who may be pretty old themselves and need help themselves and may not be able to stay in their home much longer. So this is really needed. We're trying to get it done as quickly as we possibly can, and we'd certainly be grateful for Barnstable's help in making that happen. So that's it for me. I think I'd be happy to answer any questions that I can.
Great. Well, thank you. David, we appreciate that overview. And at this point, relevant to your application. Jillian or Charlie, do you have anything to share with the board relevant to the application that's been made?
I can just state to my knowledge, everything is complete in the application. I can, just through my knowledge of the town, other towns' progress, their CPA fundings would probably be coming up in May. In other words, those funds, and it does appear as though most of the committees are looking positively. Other than that, I don't know that I have, because this group has worked with the town before, I haven't really shared much of the instruments that you would need to secure and grant, the grant agreement and things. But I think they are familiar with that, so I leave it at that.
Okay, and actually, I don't see Charlie here on the list. So, so at this point, Jillian, is this you have on the agenda that it's ready for vote by the trust? Is that correct?
That is correct. And I guess my question to you is going to be that because these were community preservation funds, so these were the previous phase one, I'm not sure whether the applicant is going to want to go through the CPC or the trust in this case, because you have been the gateway for housing applications. That's why it's coming to you first. But I'm going to be guided by you folks as to which process or how you want this to proceed.
Yeah, well, I believe that, the question becomes, is whatever's being applied for an eligible expense under CPC? We've received the CPC, so we become the entity that, I guess screens that, and then you on our behalf prepare reports and submit to the CPC as to how we're using the funds in compliance with their eligibility requirements. So that's in general. Typically, legal would advise at this point that they've reviewed the application and that we can proceed. And but I'll stop there. I don't know. I'll go to the board in a minute. I'm just kind of gathering information for my own processing right now. Mark Milne, are there adequate funds? I'm going to assume that these are eligible. This is eligible for the request, unless I hear otherwise. But Mark Milne, are there adequate funds for this request?
Yes, there are.
Thank you. Okay, Elizabeth Jenkins, do you have any comments? And I know this is a regional type project, but do you have any comments for the board relevant to this application?
I don't. I think it was great to see the first project go through and have regional support for that, and Barnstable play a role in that. I will admit I have deferred sort of detailed review of the application to Ms. Douglas, but I have no concerns about the application at this time.
Okay, so now board, do you have any questions relevant to this application? Wendy?
I have no questions. I think it's a very thorough presentation and application. Actually, the one question I had, you already asked Mark Milne, so thank you.
Yes, of course. Laura, do you have any questions?
I have a question. It's just around structure. Is this going to be, is this a separate parcel? So a separate company that's a separate LLC or nonprofit that's owning or leasing this portion? I'm just thinking about how to restrict, because we already have restrictions on the parcel from the previous phase one.
Right, I can answer that. It will not be a separate parcel in the sense that it's a legal subdivision of the property, but it'll be an on paper subdivision where both parcels then will meet any zoning, still meet any zoning restrictions, septic restrictions, etc. It will probably be a separate LLC. There's a little bit of question what the best method would be to do that. But it will be so that the new separate group of funders and their interest in the property will be represented in a separate affordability agreement and all the other mass docs documents required to make that distinction.
Yeah, it's usually has to be a separate LLC for the funding. So I was
Right.
just
Yeah.
asking the question with, since
Yeah, no,
Charlie wasn't
I
here.
appreciate it. And we've been working on resolving that. And we, as you say, I think the answer is a separate LLC.
And just to comment, I think the move to one-bedroom apartments and greater independence for the individuals with disabilities is a great move, and I know it's something that EDS has been moving towards, and so I think that's wonderful that you're doing.
All right. Any other questions by board members? Any questions by, we have many people in attendance today. Is there anybody out there who came specifically for this item, and would you like to say something? Okay, I don't see anybody. All right, so it's my understanding, short of legals, the legals, input here, that this is ready to go to the vote of the board, relevant to this application. Is that something the board wants to consider, or is that something that the board wants to take under advisement and bring up at our next meeting?
I'm prepared to vote.
Yeah, I am as well. A good question, Mr. Chair. Do we need a grant agreement executed for this, don't we?
I do believe so, yes.
Okay. So that,
Yes, through the chair, we would need a grant agreement, and you would be voting contingent on all legal approvals, because as I say, Charlie had not given me anything back on this. I know he has seen it, but I don't think he's had a chance to respond.
All right, so do we have a motion that contains that conditional approval?
Mr. Chair, I'll move that we approve this request for $375,000 contingent on all legal approvals.
Forthcoming?
Coming. Sounds good, period.
Okay.
I'll second.
Thank you. Do we have any discussion on that motion? Okay, hey, Elizabeth Jenkins, could I make a point of order?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Elizabeth, Charlie's waiting to get in.
Oh, he is in, sir.
Thank you, Elizabeth
Yes.
Jenkins. All right,
Just in time for discussion.
okay, so I'm gonna pause for, oh, I'm sorry, Wendy, you had a,
No,
Yeah.
I said, this is just in time for discussion. Charlie's timing is good.
okay, wonderful. Charlie,
Yes, sir. How are you?
welcome, welcome.
Back from the dead here. Sorry about
Okay,
that.
so you're joining us running here, Charlie.
Yeah, I had
We're on the third item.
to brush my teeth first. So
Okay, well, we're safe from that remote here. So Charlie, we're on the third item. Do you have an
Yep.
agenda?
I don't have it in front of me now. I'm sorry.
All right, so you missed, it's the application discussing friends or relatives with autism and
Yep.
relative disabilities request from David and Kathy.
Right.
So we're at a point where the board's ready to vote favorably. There's a motion and a second on the tables. We're making all of this subject to legal review and appropriate documentation presented to support this favorable vote if it results in that. Do you advise anything here to the board relevant to this application?
I'm not aware of anything that's unusual in this one. And I think I'll certainly confer further with Jillian, but my understanding is that it's ready for your approval and review and approval, and we can certainly support it quickly and turn it around. If there's anything that I need to clarify, I will do it, but I'm not aware of anything right now that we can't handle. So,
Okay. First, board, do we have any questions of Charlie McLaughlin at this point? Oh, seeing none. Kathy and David, is a conditioned approval something that's acceptable for you to move forward with?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, so board, there's a first and a second. No further discussion. I'll proceed with that at this point. So, Wendy Northcross,
I vote yes.
Laura Schufelt,
Yes,
Mark Milne,
Yes.
Mark Els, yes. Okay, thank you all. We wish you
Thank
much
you very
success.
much.
You're very welcome.
Thank you. We're very grateful for your support, and we'll keep you posted about how it's going. Thank you.
Invite us to the ribbon cutting.
Right, right, we will.
We will.
Absolutely.
Yes, and get Charlie's number and coordinate that end of it. So we, we're all set, okay?
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you so much. Okay,
thanks.
topics for discussion. We're going to move back to topic number 2, as I believe Mr. Cox is with us, has been able to connect now. So this is the application discussion and potential vote for the Mass Military Support Foundation. Mr. Cox, you out there, sir? Nope. I think we got I see them. I think they're moving around. Oh, I think you got
There he
unmuted.
is.
I think you're muted.
Okay, how's that? Better?
It works now, sir.
Okay, thank you. First of all, I'd like to thank the committee for allowing us to make this presentation. The purpose of our involvement in the affordable housing is to provide aid and assistance to those veterans who are in need. There's an existing property that I think you're all familiar with on South Street that Alan White has managed for the last 10 or 15 years as a veteran housing project with HUD and the Barnstable Housing Authority. And the property is in dire need of an upgrade. And through our outreach into the community, we saw an opportunity here to take an existing building that is in a great location to provide job opportunities, counseling, support, medical services, and everything else that is a necessity for our veterans, and to partner with Mr. White to upgrade the property, improve it, and turn it into a respectable, affordable housing project for veterans with their own amenities. So we are in the process. We have the property under agreement with Mr. White. We're buying in as a partnership now till the project is complete. And when the project is complete, we will buy Mr. White out at a predetermined price, which is in our purchase and sale agreement. We have reached out to Mass architects up in Boston who will do the design work for us. And we plan on engaging Horsley Witten to do the engineering for us, for the environmental engineering that needs to be done. The property is on sewer, but just to make sure that we don't have anything because of the location and the age of the property, we've decided to engage Horsley Witten when we get approval for this. We are taking what is now a 10-bedroom house and converting it to a 10-bedroom studio. It is currently sprinkled. It will stay sprinkled. And when we do the studios, there will be a, if you're familiar with the suites concept in the hotels, That's what my background is. We're working with our design team to design these 10 units to be like 10 individual hotel suites, that it would be a studio apartment for our veterans. There'd be 6 male and 4 female. And then the other project, the housing that we would do is 2 3-bedroom townhouse concepts that we have plans that were drawn back in the 80s for these 2 lots.
Okay. So at this point in the application process, Mr. Cox, you're asking for $50,000 pre-development fund to advance the production of this project. And when we last spoke with you, you were in the process of adding additional information to the application, as I remember it, and then staff was looking at some of the questions that the board had relevant to the use of pre-development funds, from the trust to proceed with this. And so I guess at this point, I'd like to hear from Jillian or Attorney McLaughlin relevant to the status of the application and any outstanding questions that remained after we moved this forward to a future meeting last time. So Jillian or Charlie?
I will just lead by saying that one of the concerns was that because there are existing tenants in this building, Laura had mentioned that she was concerned, what are we going to be doing with those people and where do they go? I had reached out to Lori Fenton because they believe there are 4 current tenants who are clients of Barnstable Housing Authority. And I see that Lori has joined the meeting. I don't know if there's anything else that she wanted to add, but certainly there would be some conditions that we would need to include in the award that would address relocation during construction and some things like that. The pre-development is obviously not the construction phase, but I think that we'd want to be well assured that all things have been considered. And I know I think Charlie had some other things that he wanted to say as well.
The finalize of all of those contracts.
Charlie, you out there?
I am, thank you. And forgive me, I'm at some form of consumption here, so I had a fairly lousy evening last night. But in any event, my notes I think are helpful, and in just double checking as we're sitting here. Jillian and I had, shortly after our last meeting, Jillian and I did sit down with Mr. Cox and his associate, and for about it was a 2.5 hour meeting, and we really started from scratch to understand. It was my first exposure to the matter in any substantive way, and so we kind of walked through an analysis of what we were looking for in the way of where the project was, where the purchase and sale agreement was, what the terms were, and particularly focusing on the critically important issue that is part of our mandate, that for funds for non-governmental entities looking for assistance in pre-development, that we have a viable path forward and an opportunity to secure these funds against an appropriate property in most instances, to as we have done with Hack, for example, when they did the project out behind the Chevy dealership, to secure funds to make sure that if for any reason the project does not go forward, that we have an ability to collect those funds back We just are not in a position either legally or practically to be advancing funds, soft money, if you will, soft costs, without having reasonable assurance that the project is going forward in some way to collect those back. The suggestion was made in that meeting that was the first that the proponents had heard of this requirement, and I did double check with Ruth, and right on the front page of the trust's website, in the marginal note, bold and clear as a bell, is the language that explains the need to have security. So we spent a fair amount of time trying to figure out where there would be an opportunity to obtain security. It was also at that time suggested that the purchase and sale agreement had only another a couple of weeks into early January to be performed. I make note that there's a reference now to a partnership that might be moving forward with Alan White, for at least an interim partnership. That's new news to us as we speak. So, I just am not in a position to understand what is being proposed there. But we came away, I came away, and I'll let Jillian speak for herself, that the primary prerequisite to funding a very worthy nonprofit and an effort such as this is that we've got to be able to collect our funds back and have security to do so if the project doesn't move forward. We're as a public funding agency and as a trust with especially high level of fiduciary obligations, that's our first obligation, particularly in soft costs. And at this point, I'm not able to suggest that prerequisite has been explained. I still don't understand, frankly, how we're going to be able to get security for these funds if we advance them. So I'll leave it.
Yes, thank you, Charlie. So, and certainly I'll allow, board members to add to this, but sounds to me like this either needs to be taken under advisement, or, if the applicant wants us to make a decision relevant to the application as it stands, we can do that. Based on what you've said, it may not be favorable, but so board members, do you have any comments or questions of Attorney McLaughlin or Jillian at this point?
Mark, it's
Yeah,
Wendy.
Wendy.
So I guess my question is, could we approve the pre-development funds subject to adequate security documented and satisfying our legal advisors and our trust operating procedures? Could we do that? I mean, is it put the onus back on them to come up with the adequate security?
I would, I guess I would ask if Attorney McLaughlin can answer, given that the source of the funding is the CPC, is a pre-development cost, an eligible cost for the funding source that we use as the trust to distribute this money. Specifically, this is CPC money. Do we know the answer to that, Attorney McLaughlin?
We do have precedent for this type of arrangement, most recently, about 2 years ago, just actually time flies quickly. Ruth was still with us, so it was probably closer to 3+ years now that for the project over by the Chevy dealership that we advanced monies, significant monies. They weren't per se pre-development, but the parallel is there. The problem, and I'm not speaking out of school. This was a public discussion at the time, but just to put context on it, we advanced significant monies to assist housing assistance in receiving and paying for on delivery prefab units to the site, and that was the hurdle they needed to get over. And we wrestled with this for a bit, and they were able to offer us security against a couple of apartments or units that they had on West Main Street that allowed us to secure the monies that we're advancing to pay for the delivery of the units by truck. And once those were on site up, and the key point there was that once occupancy permits were to issue, the security, the temporary security that we had in the way of first mortgages would be released, and that's what happened. So in parallel to this, you could certainly consider a vote such as that, but it was unclear to us in looking forward, and perhaps things have solidified but not been shared with us financially, how this thing is coming together. There was some talk of an earmark from the legislature, and there were a couple of other opportunities there that would certainly need to be clarified, just to make sure that this thing really does have legs and is moving forward. But on the raw question, is there something out there against we could secure? I'm not aware of it. Could you take a vote contingent on our on legal satisfaction that there is appropriate security? Certainly you could, and we would.
But
look.
I guess my question, and that was Wendy Northcross's question, and I think that's where it started. My question was, our funding source is CPC. We're accountable to CPC and the reporting we do, that we're using these funds for CPC eligible expenses. Before I was going to answer Wendy's, I wanted to know that soft costs, pre-development funds, are an eligible expense under CPC. What you just described was a securable interest in a prefab. It's an asset. These are soft costs. So I'm still unclear on that question.
Depending on what funding source, as you know, we have two tranches of money. Certainly as to the trust funds that were originally established, I'm not sure what's remaining in the bank on that, but if I'll perhaps ask Mark Milne that question. But with respect to those funds, those were not CPC funds. We could advance money.
All right, so it's difficult. So at this point, it's unclear as to the eligibility. My ultimate, again, we asked this with the last application, but we will ask always Mark Milne about funding availability. Now bringing it back out to Wendy's question, it seems unclear if there's a securable, interest here that can address the concerns of utilizing these funds. So, okay. So Wendy, I'm sorry to kind of go on a little tangent here. Wendy, do you have, I don't think that answered your question.
Well, I mean, I guess we could, but that throws the onus back onto the legal department, and then we would want a report back to our board, to the trust board, so that we know like where we are in that process. I just have great sympathy for how difficult any of these projects are to get going. And, part of me is thinking, well, can we fund another piece of this project once we know we have that security? I am too concerned about the tenants that are currently in the building, and would they become the tenants once the renovation is done? But aside from that, I just trying to figure out a creative way to get the security that we need. And if the developer is sitting here saying, well, I've got 3 other options I can look at, I can't tell you right this moment, but we can come back in 3 weeks and have a continuing conversation, then I'm willing to hear that out.
Okay, Laura Schufelt, please, and then Mark Mel.
You muted.
I thought I had unmuted and I muted. I think that CPA has been used for pre-development as long as there's security for it. And the security is not really a CPA thing. It's more of an anti-aid amendment. I would say that, we can't just give money without having some recapture, or there's, without having security, you can't have a restriction and all those things. The restriction could be in place of, could be what you're buying, when the project is moving forward. But I think, I'll go back to my other concern. I don't want to pile on. I just want to make sure that we have the concerns aired. And, my concern is that the applicant is asking for funds for a step that's 3 ahead of where they are in the process. Charlie mentioned that, we don't know where the funding's coming from. And, kind of the first thing that you need to do is make sure this is going to be financially feasible. Even when you don't have all the plans done, you don't spend tons of money before you know that it can move forward, where you're getting the funds, how much you're getting, and just in a back of the envelope financial feasibility. And so far I haven't seen that. I haven't seen the sources of fund. I haven't seen, how they think this is going to work. Also, you can't, if you're getting state funding or federal funding, there's rounds, and you can't just have to play by their rules. You don't usually get funded the first time you apply. So, there's a reality and a reality check that needs to happen. The money doesn't just appear because you ask for it. You usually have to wait. There's lots of people asking for it. But you have to, once you know it's going to be feasible, then you get the plans and, other things. So I think that's a lot of my concern, besides the security, is that there's no financial person on board to say, this is gonna be a successful project. So
Thank you.
yeah.
Thanks, Laura. Mark Mills, please.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment on the proper use of CPC funds. I agree with Laura. I mean, we have done, pre-development in the past. And if you look at our NOFA, we prepared a NOFA for the community, indicating that we were awarding pre-development funds, and the funding source was our CPC allocation. I would suggest that perhaps we do a little bit more homework with legal on this before we bring it to a vote. If we want to bring it to a vote, I don't see why we couldn't do that contingent upon a grant agreement being executed, which would include all of the legal issues that we're talking about here today, because in our guidelines, any award must have an fully executed grant agreement. So either we send it back to legal to work out the details for the missing pieces that we have here, or we vote contingent upon that successful execution of a grant agreement that includes all those legal issues that we brought up today, but that might be premature.
Okay. All right.
Mr. Ells, if
Oh,
I may, there was a couple of questions that were brought up in those comments. One of them was about what would happen to the tenants. We are doing advocacy work for one of the tenants right now, and that's what piqued our interest in improving the living conditions in that building. So the tenants would be displaced during the renovation and brought back as part of the renovation, welcome them back to their new home. And as far as the state funding, we have in the last legislature's opera funds an earmark guaranteed to us for housing in Hyannis for $200,000 that was sponsored by Senator Sear and approved by the legislature, both the House and Senate, and signed by Governor Baker. So that funding is in place. We also have funding from our partners, which haven't figured out how they want to divide up. One of our partners is Home Depot, who will be providing materials at cost to us. Another partner is a furnishing company that will be providing the amenities that we put inside. And a third partner is a funding source that hasn't decided how much money they are going to commit to the project. And we also have Cape Cod 5, who's committed to funding this for us. So those have all been shared with Jillian. And I shared those comments with Charlie in our meeting right after the last meeting when we sat down with them. So I thought these were all cleared up. I apologize if there's any question of as far as it goes.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Cox. So back to Attorney McLaughlin. At this point, would it be your recommendation for the board's consideration to take this under advisement with the applicant, try to address any and all of what we've discussed today so that you can bring this back to the board at a future meeting? Or what would be your recommendation, Attorney McLaughlin?
Thank you. My suggestion and recommendation would be that we again carve out some time and sit with the applicants and revisit exactly where the project is and look at the documentation as to where we are at. I'm particularly concerned in terms of the documentation to understand where the purchase and sale agreement stands and what the proposal is to the specifics of a first position, clear record, marketable title, or some other form of security. If we can't get past that hurdle, it would be a lot of work for not to prepare a grant agreement. So I think our time is better spent sitting down once again, and we can do so presumably fairly quickly, and try and come back to you in the next meeting with our recommendation based on what is produced and explained at that meeting. So I'm happy to do that. So
Okay, well, thank you for your, thank you for advising us on that. So board members, how would you like to proceed? Would you like to, move this to a future meeting pending, obtaining this additional information, or would you like to take other action?
Well, I would move that we move it to a future meeting and give the developers time to satisfy some of the legal requirements that have been spelled out.
Okay.
I'd second that.
Okay, thank you. Charlie, just real quick, do we need a formal vote to do that, or can I as chair just move this to a future meeting?
I think you move it to a future meeting, certainly.
Okay, Mark Milne, do you have any comment before I do this?
I would third that.
Thank you, sir. All right, so Mr. Cox, you've heard the discussion, sir. We're going to move this to a future meeting. Hopefully, when you do bring it back, all questions will be answered so we can proceed with the vote.
Thank you so much for your time. Have a great day. Thanks to the committee and all those in attendance.
Thank you, sir. We appreciate it.
Good luck.
Okay, thank you all. Was I clear as chair, Jillian, on how we're proceeding here?
Yes, sir. It sounds like Charlie and I will be I will work to set up a date with all parties, and then we'll be coming back to you. And I'm going to try to get that on your March meeting then, but that's going to be contingent on.
From my perspective, it would be preferred that when these answers, when you and legal come back stating that the application is complete and all answerable questions have been answered, that would be the time to bring it back for vote.
Very
Okay.
good. Thank you. Thank you very
Okay.
much, everyone. I know that was a tricky one. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right. Topic number 4, trust administrators updates. Jillian.
Just wanted to report that we did have a request for buy down funds for a HOP unit. And I was hoping that Gail Kelleher from Housing Assistance Corporation, and it looks like she is on. So this is a unit that is currently on the subsidized housing inventory. But because of the deed restriction, that I put a memo in that sort of explains the old system had a discount rate, and the current appraised value, even after applying the discount rate, does not bring these HOP units, most of them, into an affordable range. So the request is for buy down funds. And Ellen Swiniarski had been very helpful because she provided a previous vote by town council to appropriate funds. There were CPA funds appropriated in 2017, of which there appears to be a current balance, a remaining balance of $74,900. So we believe that this could be done basically just by a vote. And my understanding is that because the town council put the money under the town manager's approval, that would be Mark. You would be the person that would then authorize that if that was the release of those funds, if we were to proceed. And I did want to have Gail just make a little comment just about the address of the property.
The property is at 23 Tanbark in Marston's Mills. It's a 3-bedroom, 2-bath Cape. We've had this in the past where the older riders have caused the price to be unaffordable to the buyers within the income ranges. This particular property needs some work. The way the price is coming out, it's according to the appraisal, it's about 270, and the most that a buyer can afford now, based on our calculation, including taxes, interest rate, and so forth, is about 235, maybe 230, depending on the interest rate, which makes a tremendous difference. So in the past, we've done it. It's worked fairly well, and I think sometimes it was a trust, and sometimes it was CPA. Laura probably remembers some of these that we did with Arden. Luckily, I don't know how many more of these HOP riders are still out there or when people are going to sell, but it's going to come up again in the future. So we can kind of be prepared because we need to move quickly. There are timeframes in the old deed rider saying that if you don't have an eligible purchaser by this date, then the property can be sold off the program. So where it costs, maybe $400,000 or $450,000 to create a new unit, we certainly don't want to lose a unit if possible. And when we sell it, we will change the deed rider. We'll be working with DHCD on this one, change the deed rider into one that survives foreclosure, and that is on the property in perpetuity for buyers earning 80% AMI. We had in the last year 2 units that were 120 AMI or Gallagher Lane that had the same chance of the deed restriction going away. We were able to sell them and make a new deed restriction on those, which is the same universal deed rider that survives foreclosure and is in perpetuity, even though those are 2 moderates. So I'm not sure the mechanism of how to make it work in a sort of quick way to just have the money at the closing, which is what we've done in the past. I don't know the mechanism of how you guys work.
Mark,
Okay, yes, Laura.
I believe in the past it went to the town manager at the time to approve and put it together. I think it was, I don't think the trust ever voted on it because it was CPA funds. It wasn't trust funds. It wasn't given to the trust. I'm pretty sure it was reported to the trust, but I don't think we had the authority to approve or disapprove. I think it was town manager's approval that was required. That's what the vote was for, so that it could be done in a quick, in the time frame, and it has to be quick. So if it had to go to town council, for example. It didn't work. Town council already authorized the money through CPA. So I think it was advisory to us and approval by you, Mark.
Like the
So Mark, can I ask a question of Mark Milne at this point? Mark, that original appropriation from 17 that we're referring to, those funds have been utilized already, correct?
No, they're available, sir. And
So
the
so
trust
outside-
doesn't need to act on this. Yeah.
So does the board need to act on this? or-
No, this is the funding source. The proposed funding source was an older funding source that has already been approved by the town council, which authorized the town manager to execute such transaction.
So pending legal and your review and you advising me as to how to proceed. So right now, 75,000 is available from that appropriation. It's not something that falls under the authority of the trust. So therefore, the request for this buy down would come to me, defer to you and legal and finance would advise, and then I would either proceed or not proceed, correct?
Yes. And that I would, well, legal in conjunction with planning and development, I just want to make, I think they should
Yeah.
talk about
Well,
whether this is.
Yeah, understood. You've already advised me. You said the money's there and what's being requested, I'm assuming, pending their statements, would be an appropriate use as a buy down.
Correct.
Okay.
about 35,000 would be the gap on this particular property. That would be helpful
Okay.
to make it
And,
work.
okay, thank you, Gail. And so Laura and Wendy, you've heard this discussion. Sounds as though Laura has said in the past, the trust has just been advisory. I'm going to proceed as I've described. I'm going to ask Elizabeth Jenkins to coordinate with legal and to come back to me with a recommendation relevant to the use of these funds, okay? Elizabeth Jenkins, are you comfortable with that?
Yes, sir. I'm very comfortable with that. And we will work, I will work with Jillian and legal to make sure that we have sort of adequate funds available should these requests come forward in the future.
Okay, great. Thank you. Appreciate that. Appreciate all.
Just can
bringing this to our attention. Thank you for your patience as we move through this.
through you,
Yes,
Mark,
sir.
may I
Yeah,
just ask Gail, Gail, what's your timeline? When do you need to close on this?
We haven't identified a buyer yet, but we need to start the marketing. And in order to start the marketing, we need to know the price. So we need it
Okay, good.
immediately. At least we don't actually need the money, but we need the permission to price the property at 235. Knowing that
Understand.
within
Great.
45 days, we can receive the payment made out to the closing attorney or something.
Very good. Thank you. Good.
And Gail, I think you're aware that there was a second one of these that came through very recently. So I don't know if there's some sense in thinking about those two together in terms of doing the marketing, but I can talk to you about that offline.
There were two, and one of them closed recently, which was a moderate, and I don't know of another one right now, but they do come up.
Okay,
fairly
I'll talk
often.
to you afterwards.
Thank you.
okay, thank you, Elizabeth. Thank you, Charlie. Mark. Jillian, rather, any further
Just
discussion
thank
on
you
this?
so much for helping me to understand the process on this. And I think it sounds like you're very well poised to deal with these quicker than I thought. So that's great news. And it looks like you might have a save here. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Okay, closing out topic 4, moving to topic 5, update on administrative support for the trust and housing coordinator. Elizabeth Jenkins, please.
Thank you. I did want to acknowledge Ms. Northcross. I think she had a question.
Oh, I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
I'm
Wendy.
I may have to leave before the meeting is over. I can switch to my phone, but I just wanted to give you a heads up on that. If there were any other votes, I may just.
Do you have a hard stop time?
I have to be standing in front of a microphone at 11 o'clock and I have to get to that microphone. So I would say in about 10 minutes, 10, 12 minutes, hard stop.
Understood. We'll expect you to depart by 10:30. Thank you, Wendy. We still have a quorum with myself, Laura Schufelt, and Mark Mill. Okay, so Elizabeth Jenkins.
Thank you, sir. I just wanted to let you make the board aware that I think we are in agreement with Jillian to sign another contract with her, another year contract with her to continue to be our trust administrator. She's been a fantastic resource to us. I looked back at the original vote and I do not believe this, the extension requires board approval, but did want to make you aware that that is circulating. I also wanted to acknowledge that I believe when the trust voted to provide administrative support via Ellen Swiniarski, that I would report back to you on a regular basis on the cost of that administrative support, just to make sure they were staying online. I apologize, we've had a little gap in our administrative coverage in the office recently, so I don't have that prepared, but I will circulate that report for you at your next meeting.
Okay, thank you. Anything else? No. All right, moving on to topic number 6. Updates from David Anthony. David Anthony, is there anything to update us on, sir, relevant to town properties for affordable housing?
Two very brief things. One, we extended the CC construction. I may have said this before. We extended CC construction through March at the location next to the Barnstable Police Department, as they are continuing under contract to do sewer work. And we have an internal draft of an RFP for House on the Hill. It's not ready for public consumption yet. We have taken into account a number of the examples that Laura had provided that we had on file over the years, even though those were lease developments as opposed to home ownership models. We found that it was very helpful for language, very helpful for some of the evaluation criteria. And we are circulating that amongst staff and hope to make progress on that in the near future.
All right, David, thank you. Appreciate the update. Any discussion with David by the board? Laura, please.
Has there been any pre-development work other than what had been done previously by UTL on that DAV lot, so that it could be ready for a RFP release when CC construction moves out? Or prep to make it? I don't know that it's even been declared surplus. So those are my questions.
We have been moving through some public outreach components, as is consistent with the way that we are dealing with disposal of properties across the board. We make sure that town councilors have been informed before activities happen on town property like this, and we generally have reached out to civic associations. This particular area is away from downtown, about as far as you can get from Hyannis, and it's right on the corner where several of the precincts intersect. So we're working through that initial outreach, and we will be moving that forward and making it a bit more public once we've completed that portion.
Okay.
We're active in discussion, Laura, with the president of the council, vice president of the council, and then others as appropriate. And we actually have a meeting Monday morning on it in general. So, and this is part of that discussion. So no clear answer for you yet, though. All right. Thank you, David. Appreciate it. Moving on to topic 7, topic for future meetings and agendas. Anything that any of the board members would like to bring forward at this time? All right. Staff, Jillian, Elizabeth? Okay, thank you. Matters not reasonably anticipated by the chair. topic number 8. None at this time. Our next meeting is the March 3rd, 2023 at 9 a.m. And if there's nothing else at this point, I will look for a motion to adjourn.
I'll move that.
Okay, thank you, Wendy Northcross. Do I have a second?
Second,
Thank you, Mark Milne. Roll call vote. Laura Schufelt,
Yes.
Wendy Northcross,
Yes.
Mark Milne,
yes.
Mark Ells, yes. Thank you all. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Stay warm.
okay, you too.